Good morning, everyone. Today, we will look into the influencing factors in the family environment and the relation of this family environment in causing and maintaining the psychological illness, especially of the long-term psychological illnesses like anxiety disorders, depression, and schizophrenia kind of conditions. Here, family plays a very major role, influencing role in shaping the individual of its family members, and then individual is considered as a product of the family unit. Here, the various factors that can influence along with the combined with the biological vulnerability. There's always a hereditary or biological vulnerability factor which is considered to be of biological basis for causing these mental illnesses. So psychological or psychiatric illnesses are always considered to be an interaction of this biological, psychological, as well as social factors. So we are mainly looking at here the psychological factors related to the family environment and what kind of help these families are required. So looking at mainly the influencing factors, the various important factors that we will look at now. One of the important factor is the maladaptive behaviors that a family adopts as a reaction to the stress. So when there is an extreme rigidity in trying to make adaptations to the developmental stages that require constant adaptations by all the family members, when these adaptations are not made and in a healthy way, and there is a rigidity in kind of not making these required changes, there can be an increased stress built up between the family members and their relationship. So which can result in a maladaptive kind of behaviors, a rigidity in terms of unable to mold according to the developmental requirements of the growing children or the other developmental aspects that we have discussed at enough length in our previous videos. So those who have not followed it, kindly look into the developmental stages of the family where I have narrated in detail. So when stress is or the developmental adaptations that one family need to make is being encountered with a rigid way of handling, then there can be these maladaptive behaviors that are set into pattern. So most of the behavior disorders that one see in children are because of these behaviors. Say, for example, if there is a marital kind of strained relationship between wife and husband, in order to ease this strain or in order to reduce the stress on this strain, the parents might focus on the child while giving a kind of inconsistent discipline where they are projecting the child into having behavior problems, and this becomes a strain on the children. So these are some of the kind of, how a family, when it fails to make changes or adaptations according to the changing needs or changing requirements of the family, so it can move into a kind of, unhealthy patterns in their behaviors. So that is one thing. And looking at the factor of boundaries. So there is always a boundary who in this family unit takes what role and how they perform this role. So there can be a different kind of boundaries, especially looking at the unhealthy kind of boundaries, where there is a kind of diffused or closed or rigid boundaries. There are two kinds of families that are scientifically identified in having problems with the boundaries. So here, enmeshed families, where any single behavioral encounter, like it can be a sneeze by a child, also can reverberate the entire family environment, where because the child is not taken care, and then because the various factors, so it can actually, a small incident can completely shaken up the entire family members and disturb the harmony of the family environment in case of an enmeshed kind of family situation. There are other kind of families where the boundaries are very kind of diffused, and they are kind of disengaged completely. In such situations where even if there is a problem, in the actual problem in the family, it is considered to be of not very serious, or there is hardly any connection. There's an interpersonal distance where emotionally they look at it as unaffected, or more in terms of being indifferent, where they are completely disengaged, and then it doesn't have any effect on individual family members. So say, for example, if a teenage child is not returning home for many days, so usually the reasoning might go like, oh, they are staying with the family, some other family or friend's house, while the child may be into some drug addiction or some such other severe problems. It is more looked at it in a more disengaged fashion. So these are the problems where there is kind of unhealthy boundaries between the family members. That is another influencing factor. Looking at the other possibility is the kind of the rituals, family rituals that one maintain. So family rituals is an indication of a collective sense, like celebrating festivals or get-togethers, where usually as an indication of these kind of collective feeling within the family. So when there is a kind of patterns, like say in some of the families, taking alcohol when there is a ritual or functions is considered to be quite normal. But when some individual in the family is affected into a kind of addiction, alcohol addiction, it is more like a promotion or promoting or facilitating these kind of rituals, which is actually getting into a kind of an abnormal kind of addiction situations. So family rituals, looking at the healthy side, more on the collective sense, whereas here the kind of hierarchies or who performs what roles is very clearly defined when there is a celebration, whereas the other extreme towards the abnormality will be more like transmitting all these unhealthy rituals of alcohol consumption as a collective group kind of situations. So the other aspects of possibilities are the roles that roles as well as the alliances. We call it alliances from the psychological perspective. Alliance is the kind of relationship that family members maintain with each other. Sometimes these alliances where there can be a kind of unhealthy kind of alliances where two people joining together and then kind of aggressively attacking a third family member. So looking at an example, like one of the situation in Alliance is the is the scapegoating of children. So sometimes when there is a marital discord between parents, instead of focusing on resolving this relationship, the focus is entirely shifted onto the child, where there is a kind of inconsistent discipline and parenting relationship, inconsistent discipline of the child, giving a kind of ambiguous messages to the child, which can be very confusing to the child. And then it ends up in a kind of, projecting the child as having behavioral issues, while the parental discord being the main area of, the pathology. So that is one thing where the child is being scapegoated as a victim, while the pathology is with the adult parents. Triangulation is another kind of maladaptive alliance that we can look at, where two people trying to, bond together while attacking a third person. So here there can be like, it is one parent or the child trying to attack the third parent, trying to attack the third family member, the other parent, where there can be unhealthy kind of interpersonal interactions leading into more pathological interactions and behavior patterns. So looking at the maladaptive communications, the communication between the family members plays a very vital role in maintaining the harmony in a family unit. So the communications that are identified to be disturbed and producing these kind of pathologies are indirect communication, where the family members don't talk to each other directly. Be it a verbal communication or a non-verbal communication, there's always an indirect way of communicating the information. And there can be a kind of switchboard kind of information, where communication, where the information is passed through a third person, which can have a kind of misconstrued, or it can be a distorted kind of message that might be, disturbing the harmony of the relationship. So there is another kind of communication called double bind communication. This is again, here the parent is giving a completely contradictory messages to the child, while projecting the child as having a pathology or the problems. So these are different kind of abnormal communication patterns that can instill and maintain the psychological illness in not only, even though one family member is projected as having issues, it is the entire family that needs the psychological help here. So communication, maladaptive communications or unhealthy communications is another influencing factor. And there can be other concerns like inverted hierarchies. Sometimes culturally, if the role of earning is on the husband, and the nurturing role or the nourishing role is on the wife or the mother, sometimes in families, if the let us say in alcohol families, or in families where the father is not having a kind of enough financial supporting way, or loss of job, where the mother had to take the role of running the family, and may have to do the active full-time employment, while the father is taking the nourishing role. If it is culturally considered to be as inversion of roles, which can create a lot of stress between the family members, leading into trouble. So sometimes this kind of inverted hierarchy can happen with the children, where the children have the potential to have the power of running the house, while the parent is considered to be as not very productive. So when the power charge is given to the child, it is not only the child who is under psychological stress, it is the entire family that is having the effect on how these powers, inverted powers that are culturally considered to be not going well or unhealthy. So these are some of the influencing factors that we can look at in today's session. In the next episode, we will look at the continuation of the same influencing factors in terms of how the various emotions, unhealthy emotions, though considered to be are the building bricks of bonding between the family members, sometimes overexpression of these emotions, and how they can be the reason for causing, maintaining, as well as repeated relapse of the psychological illness. We'll look into the next week's episode. If I continue in the same episode, it can become a little more complex. So I'm trying to make it as simplified as I could, so that the viewers can understand them in a little more clear fashion. Thank you, and we'll continue the same topic in the next week.